Happy Thursday, everybody. We're almost to the weekend. So our essential questions are the same as the past couple of days. And remember, our essential questions are questions we will be able to answer at the end of our unit. So our essential questions are, what characteristics are common in all ecosystems? And what characteristics are common or specific to certain ecosystems? So yesterday we talked about terrestrial ecosystems or terrestrial biomes, and those are biomes that are found on land. So today we're going to talk about aquatic biomes, and aquatic means water. So if you have an aquarium, you have for your fish or anything else that might live in water. So aquatic biomes are the largest biomes. Water covers nearly 75% of the Earth's surface, and it's in the form of ocean, lakes, and rivers, and other things as well. And just like other biomes, aquatic biomes can be divided into two categories. You've got the freshwater region and the saltwater region. And within those, there are different types of habitats as well. So we're going to start with a clean page in your science journal or a sheet of notebook paper. You're going to turn that page horizontally, and you're going to draw a horizontal line across the middle, so side to side, and then two vertical lines. This is going to make 6 boxes to put your information about the 6 different types of aquatic biomes. Feel free to pause the video to go get your paper and draw your 6 boxes. We are going to watch a aquatic ecosystem study jams.
Whoa, these guys are hungry.
I bet they miss Mia. I can't wait till she's back from Hawaii.
I know. Hey, she should bring some fish back for her tank.
That'd be cool if she could, but it'd never work. These fish are freshwater fish.
So, they can still be friends?
Sure, but the fish that live in the ocean are saltwater fish. They'd never survive in this freshwater tank.
I thought fish just needed water to survive.
All fish need water, but different fish need different places and different natural conditions in which to live. Those places and conditions are called a habitat.
So the saltwater fish can't survive in the same habitat as the fish in this tank?
No, they can't. There are 2 different kinds of aquatic systems, saltwater and freshwater. Saltwater fish live in the ocean. The ocean is a saltwater ecosystem. This tank is a freshwater ecosystem. Ponds, swamps, and bogs are freshwater ecosystems.
I never knew there was a difference.
The main difference between aquatic ecosystems is salt. Freshwater ecosystems are not salty. Well, freshwater has a tiny bit of salt, but not enough to make a difference. Creatures like snails, worms, and frogs live in freshwater. Plants like cattails and arrowheads grow there too.
Sounds like the swamp behind my house. Saltwater fish are so much cooler. Mia sent me a pic of one, and it was bright pink like your guitar. It had black tiger stripes and blue fins.
Saltwater fish are a lot different than freshwater fish, and so is their saltwater ecosystem. It's very salty and has different habitats, or zones, where different organisms live.
Like a deep end and a shallow end?
Kinda. There are 3 habitats or zones: intertidal, open ocean upper region, and open ocean lower region. Different organisms live in these different zones. The shallow end is the intertidal. This is where the tide comes in and out and is the top part of the water. Crabs, mussels, and barnacles live in this zone. So do plankton.
Plankton?
Plankton are organisms that float on water. They are very small, but very important. They make oxygen.
What about the other zones?
Below the intertidal zone is the open ocean upper region. This is where most of the fish you know live, along with turtles, whales, and sharks. These are all called nekton. Nekton are organisms that swim in water.
And then there's the bottom.
Right. The open ocean lower region is the darkest, coldest zone. Down here in the dark, there are even fish that light up. This is where the benthos live. Benthos are bottom dwellers. Eels and shrimp are benthos.
Mmm, shrimp. I love benthos. For dinner.
Deep, Sam. Deep.
Well, at least now I know the difference between saltwater and freshwater ecosystems. Saltwater ecosystems are very salty, and freshwater ecosystems are not as salty. There are different habitats in aquatic ecosystems. Each habitat is unique and is a home to different organisms.
And no matter how cool they are, saltwater fish can't live in a freshwater tank.
I know. Maybe I can paint me as fish. Think she'd notice?
Sam, don't even think about it.
Right. So coming back, we're going to start with freshwater. We're going to watch this Crash Course Kids video about freshwater first.
Let me take you back in time for a sec, way back to the beginning of this show. Remember that? The very first thing we learned is that animals need the energy from food in order to live. And that's still true. But I have news for you. There's something else that animals, and pretty much everything else, need to live too. No, not YouTube videos of cats, although it's hard to imagine life without them. I'm talking about water. Living things need water. Some living things need fresh water, and some need salt water. But all living things need some form of water to keep on living. I know you know what water is. You've seen it, you've done cannonballs into it, you've filled balloons with it and threw them at people, and you certainly drink it. Water is one of the most common substances on Earth. It covers more than 2/3 of the surface of our planet. We actually have enough water on Earth to leave a faucet running for 136 trillion years. But let's not do that. Because for all the water we have, there's one kind of water that we need to keep us alive, and that's fresh water. So what is fresh water and where do we get it? Well, it's probably easier to start with where it's not. Most of the water on Earth is in the oceans. They're huge and they're also full of salt. So most of the water on Earth is actually salt water. By contrast, fresh water is found in lakes, rivers, ponds, wetlands, and streams, and it contains very little salt, less than 0.1% salt actually. And plants and animals, including us humans, depend on fresh water because we can't survive on salt water. The amount of salt in salt water is much higher than what our bodies can process. In fact, drinking too much salt water could even kill a person, which is just one of the reasons fresh water is so important. So now you know what fresh water is and that it's super necessary to our survival. But if the oceans make up most of the water on Earth, where can you find fresh water? Let's take a look at a map to see if we can find some of its major sources. People who study geography, we call them geographers, use maps all the time. They're interested in Earth's physical features like its mountains, deserts, rivers, and oceans. This map shows all of the Earth's land and water. All of the blue stuff is water. But remember, most of the blue stuff is salt water. In fact, about 97% of the water on the planet is salty. So let's do some math with that. If 97% of the Earth's water is salt water, then only about 3% of the planet's total water supply is fresh water. But about 2% is locked up in frozen glaciers or underground where we can't get to it. So that means of all the water that's on Earth, less than 1% of it is actually accessible to us on the surface. So we can grow crops and have drinking and bathing water for our homes. Now that you know how little fresh water there really is on Earth's surface, it kind of makes sense that most sources of fresh water would be too small to spot on a map this big. But if we zoom in, we can get close enough that we can spot a few. See any freshwater sources here in North America? I'll give you a hint. They're pretty great. I'm talking about the Great Lakes. The Great Lakes hold a lot of fresh water. About 20% of Earth's available fresh water is actually in those 5 lakes. But the Great Lakes are really big examples of where fresh water can be found. Most fresh water is in much smaller lakes, rivers, and streams on every continent. Those are the small blue lines in the inland bodies of water, like these. So what does this map tell us? Well, it tells us that there's a lot of water on Earth, but very little of it is fresh water. And since humans and many other animals need fresh water to survive, they're likely to live in habitats that are near major sources of fresh water, like a river or a lake, maybe one of the Great Lakes. If they don't live near a source of fresh water, then people have to adapt their environment to bring the water to them. Remember when we talked about Las Vegas? So, fresh water is the substance that keeps you and me and Catbot and Grumpy Cat and just about every other living thing alive. And it's all over the Earth. Earth in extremely limited amounts. So use it wisely.
All right, so in the first box on your sheet, you're going to write streams and rivers. And streams and rivers are found in fresh water, or they are fresh water. You are also considered to be springs, mountain lakes, and melted snow help to contribute to streams and rivers. And the kind of life that you'll find in streams and rivers are trout, salmon, and algae. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. Next, we have ponds and lakes. Ponds and lakes are also freshwater. Lakes are those bodies of water that will last. Ponds are smaller and usually fill during a rainy season. You will find amphibians, insects, turtles, snakes, and birds around ponds and lakes. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. Let's watch a freshwater biome song by Mr. Parr.
Hold on to water we go. Here we go now, freshwater biomes, rivers and streams, and then the shallow ponds. The species call it home. These are the freshwater biomes. Lakes and ponds of water is calm. Lakes are larger and deeper, but shallow is a pond. And sunlight it will reach bottom. Insects, snails, salamanders, and frogs. That species call it home. These are the freshwater biomes. Moving now, it's rivers and streams. Water is rushing, animals adapt to current. Few plants are algae growing now. First level consumers eat seeds found. That species call it home. These are the freshwater biomes.
Okay, let's move on to Wetlands. Wetlands are also considered freshwater. You may also hear wetlands referred to as marshes, swamps, or bogs. And you will find frogs, lizards, ducks, and pelicans within the wetlands. Estuaries. Estuaries, we are moving into saltwater, but estuaries are where saltwater and freshwater meet. And this is a very unique ecosystem. This ecosystem, the animals that live here have to be able to live in both freshwater and saltwater. So you've got animals such as worms, oysters, crabs, herons, and otters. Water in estuaries is considered brackish. You will see this word again. So whenever you see the word brackish, think estuary. Estuaries are brackish water. Next, we have coral reef. Coral reef is saltwater. Coral is living. It is not a rock. And it's found as barriers along continents. If you've ever heard of the Great Barrier Reef along the coast of Australia. And animals you'll find are fish, sea urchin, octopi, and starfish.
Thank you very much. Miss Anderson, please dial 4192. Miss Anderson, please dial 4192.
And next we have ocean, or finally we have ocean. Ocean is the largest aquatic biome. It is saltwater. It has a high amount of salinity, which is just a fancy word for salt. At the top of the ocean, there is a lot of sun. At the bottom of the ocean, there is little to no sun. And some of the animals you will find there are algae, fish, sharks, whales, and seaweed.